DJM TV.
Collect more revenue, but at what cost? That will cost lead to job losses, lead to closures, etc., etc., etc. So we do need to understand the primary purpose. In my view, there are things we seem to have taken for granted, and I think Masu, we should call you doctor now, because I mean you are more sound in terms of the practical reality with regards to production and movement of goods within the region and so on. I thought if a guy, I like to discuss in a level that we workers can understand ourselves. Before I begin to contemplate going to university, I think as a parent I need to ask, how fair has my child done in a primary school? Did he do well to merit secondary school? Depending on whether he made his wife or not, then I will consider whether he should go to university. And looking at him, what is his area of where does he seem to have a better attitude in terms of career progression in the future? I would like to ask, before we begin to talk about free trade within Africa, how successful was our ECOWAS agreement? Because ECOWAS, I understand, it was meant to promote free trade, movement of goods and persons within West Africa. And what have we seen? Because someone eloquently showed us how, under the guise of ECOWAS, many ECOWAS countries who simply don't have production base simply became, by government official policies, particularly in the smaller countries around us, became a dumping ground for prohibited goods. They legalized their import into their country, but Nigeria is the destination. And you now have to resort to measures which in a democracy are arguable, namely having to invoke the power of the state to decree that we close our borders. Why did we close the borders? Because our neighboring countries were not observing the rules of ECOWAS. So if we could not effectively get our neighboring West African countries to observe the rules of the game, is that a basis to proceed to expand further, bring in all other African countries, precisely because even the smaller ones will do it? I have learned from my union training never to be idealistic. Of course, I'm driven by idealism. That is what pushed me to the world of work in the first place. I mean, a union work. But sorry, not to be driven by ideal policies, but to deal with practically realizable and achievable policies on the basis of my own peculiar experience, not on the basis of the experiences of other people. It is how I define my situation that will inform my policy choices. Not copying Europe. And if you want to copy Europe, you must be a thought as to why is UK withdrawing from Europe? Which means the European Union is not as perfect as it appears to the external observer. If it's beneficial to UK, will they pull out? Why are they pulling out? So people are even talking of common currency for the continent. How does the common currency work for European when you look at some of the crises they've had in Greece and several other European countries? So me, I don't do things because others are doing it. I have to do something because it suits me. This is the time to borrow the only one word one man used somewhere. I don't want to mention his name so that the disease doesn't affect us. This is the time for Nigeria first. Because the logic of a continental trade, as one of the speakers mentioned, was to have access from Nigerian point of view. Instead of being limited to a market of 200 million, you will now have access to a market of 1.2 billion. Theoretically, this is fine. if you were confronted with a situation in which you have so much to sell, but you have limited outlet to sell it. So you are now going to a trade agreement so that you can have access to other markets. But I ask us, even as you try hard, and it's a good effort, Mr. President, to wear made in Nigeria, because it will be very difficult for you as textile workers who are committed to protect textile jobs to go and be importing things as we used to do before. But look beyond your clothes and look at your socks. Are they also made in Nigeria? I can see Issa Aremu here. I'm looking at his shoes and I'm looking at my own shoes. They do not look like product of Leonard's. They don't look like product of Leonard. Don't help me. I said your shoes are my shoes. I'm not explaining them. They are neither made in Nigeria. I'm not even sure they are made in Africa. But I use this because we have so many things in common. We look smallish, and we have both worked in the textile union. So he will not pick offense. In any case, we can afford the mutual physical fight. But every other person, there and here, we are all wearing smuggle shoes. I suspect that because some officers' uniform is not Nigerian made, therefore if I were to have access to state information, God knows, as a governor of Edo State, I had the privilege to sit in a meeting of National Economic Council and National Council of State. And I said to our late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, I said, government has turned Nigeria to duty-free country. Duty-free in the sense that, at the very best, we have the political will to prohibit a number of items, including furniture, including certain categories of fabric, leather, and several other things. And yet, every Nigerian knows how much you pay to get, a container of any of these prohibited items. So the result is that because they are prohibited, Nigeria collects no duties. So that's why I call them duty-free. And because of the excess of penetration of these prohibited items, it means that effectively Nigeria is basically a duty-free country. Here we are not an international airport. But even when you buy duty-free items in an international airport, in countries where laws are strictly enforced, when you get to your country, other than the duty allowance, which Nigeria Customs will advertise on arrival, every other thing you bought at duty-free, you ought to pay duty on it once you exceed the maximum allowance, which is no more than $500, I suspect. So everybody is smuggling. Police are smuggling uniforms. Nigeria Army is smuggling uniforms. Nigeria Air Force is smuggling uniform. Who is not a smuggler? I told the president again that looking at all of us, the governors, including the president himself, we were all wearing prohibited fabrics. And sitting
DJM TV
on prohibited furniture. There is room for for frank engagement between victims of incoherent policies and those who churn out those incoherent policies. There is need to find courage to engage those responsible for policies which they have refused to enforce, and those who are victims of lack of enforcement of policies that appear to be good on paper. So, my point of departure is, why expand beyond ECOWAS when we couldn't even manage ECOWAS? And as we speak, middle of last year, we saw Nigerians deport to South Africa. So Africans are even allowing Africans to set up legitimate businesses in African countries. I have been reading over the past 2 weeks suggestions that we should evacuate Nigerians from Ghana. So the Ghanaians are not tolerating Nigerians, not managing smuggled goods, but just to participate in the economy in spite of the provisions of ECOWAS. I'm asking myself, my own ignorance and very limited knowledge of international trade, that if really this is who we are, what is the theoretical foundation and what is the experience that informed the policy that we should expand for them. So I want our experts to take note of this. The advantage I have is that if I am wrong, I am not an expert. I don't have to be right. But if I manage to be right, then it's just a miracle. In our sub-region, what is their production base? I think Engineer Masood referred to that. African countries that can be said to have a production base. If you don't have a manufacturing base, what is it that you seek to move freely within the continent? So people are going to be signatories, and if you look at those who were in a hurry to sign, they are precisely those who have no manufacturing base and no goods to sell within the continent. And I suspect that they do so because they are going to set up free ports, and Europe and America, Asia, every other part of the world, we use their ports. They will put their country labels if they want to even disguise it, and Nigeria will be the destination. I think that we need to be more sensitive at this time. And I'm happy with what the Director of NSC said about employment and so on. First is that I want us to shift emphasis away from these, what has for me become very boring statistics about the population of our youth in relation to those of our education. Thank God I'm a youthful man. That's why I try to do as much as I can. And the face cap is helpful. Copying the fact that my head is totally bad. This is why I used to use phone when I was in my early 30s and late 20s. Are we actually asking the question, the world we are in now, is it a world in which it's about the quantity that defines the energy? No. In my humble opinion, no. It is the quality of the skills of our youth. So when you refer to qualitative, just speak to the quantity, and you are silent about the quality. I'm afraid in a world that is knowledge-driven, we do need to ask far more fundamental questions. So, and what is the problem? Employers, I'm sure Engineer Masood will tell you, because you see, we can find the port without tracing the route. Let's avoid dealing with consequences and avoid the primary causes. I'm sure that for the Dangote group, it will be cheaper to employ Nigerian engineers, electrical, electronic, whatever, and they're even more reliable because they don't have to claim they are going on holidays and they get caught up with the coronavirus lockdown. And I know that by reason of my personal relationship, you had issues with people who travel out because of the lockdown and they couldn't come back, and production is waiting because the countries are closed borders. So it is not cheaper for the employer. Now, what is the link between this and the fact that our own colleagues spend 1 day teaching and 3 days on strike under the umbrella of ASU? Even at the time you are talking of coronavirus has also created its own industry. It created industry for researchers in universities. It created small-scale industries for the manufacture of. I'm not about to throw it away a statement somewhere. It has created its own industries. But even our own, if we were to decide, given huge employment challenges, to say that our own mask must be Nigeria-made mask, that will create its own medium or micro or have whatever name defined. So I think that we need to really ask more practical questions and examine ourselves. I was a governor, and I'm happy that I became one so that nobody can say I don't know what I'm talking about. From what I know now, if I know it then when I was in NFC, I will fight even harder than I did. Because policies are rolled out without proper consulting those who will be affected. And you know how I got to know Chief Alhaji Dangote Aliko? was during the economic storming group. I just find that ministers who are political appointees, not based on their background, not based on their line of training, they turn up and pontificate on policies on behalf of the private sector. And if a private sector operative asks radical questions, then you are targeted. So I was in this group, and I was asking the questions that the big business people could not ask, and Ali could then ask me. Then I didn't know who he was. He said, "But you have some money." I said, "You seem to know our problem as much as we do. You do know it more than us. But you people are always fighting us." I said, "Yes, I don't like business people, but I just find that I need them for my own enlightened self-interest. Because when public policies or incoherent policies or lack of political will to enforce policies lead to factory closures, the first casualty are workers. And the fewer workers I have, the less my strength. The strength of a trade union is a function of the capacity and the viability of the employer that employs the worker. So when it comes to how to help businesses to grow, to create jobs, viable jobs, profitable jobs, we are building our strength to be able to confront. What does it make if I train an employer who is trying to decide whether to close or not? I just give him ultimatum. So thank God, I will have other days to close my gate. So that all the other provisions in labor law with regards to redundancy payments and so on, I will be free. And we pretend that you went on illegal strike. Those who are sometimes somebody at the industrial court. So I think that these issues, my advice, Mr. President, and I'm very happy that the NSC Deputy President is here and the General Secretary is here. I think we need to organize a platform to engage with ministers, to engage not ministers of state only, ministers themselves, to engage the economic team, including the one appointed by the President, engage those managing our Nexim Bank, all of these institutions put in place, so that we can at least talk to each other and understand where people are coming from. So that we don't go and commit ourselves to agreements that will really prepare for us. Those of us in the textile union, we knew. And that's the way you clam for the guy who asked for free money. I am like, you have not properly understood where we are coming from. The textile industry did not collapse because of shortage of working capital. And I'm happy that we have Engineer Masu, who, as I know now, had a terrible business that was dead to manage in a regime, policy regime under which you can smuggle in the very item he was trying to produce at Kaduna Textile. So, going forward, I read an article somebody wrote to me. This doesn't like me to mention his name, I'm not going to mention it. Manufacturing Africa. You know, we are not about to reinvent the wheel. We don't need neither AFC, EDA, etc. We didn't have those when we had Kaduna Textiles Limited, where you were managing director, employed 4,000 Nigerian workers, running 24-hour shift. We didn't need this facility where we had Northspring Nigeria Limited, a British company. We didn't have this before we had Northern Nigeria Textile, just close to KTL. We didn't have this before we had Notex. We didn't have this to have Fintex. We didn't have this to have Arewa Textile, without which I will not be here. And this is the product of our fourth generation political leaders, like Sarabadu Beru, who rightly felt that it is a shame that we grow so much cotton in the north, but we are not adding value. We are exporting the cotton to Europe. So to create jobs, we need to set up textile factories. That is the history of Kaduna Textiles, before other people follow. So what has happened that many years later, when our politicians have PhDs, they have MSCs, they have all the C's and so on, we are beginning to ask, there is nothing that will be said here that translates beyond common sense. Absolutely nothing. With all due respect to all those who are spoken. I have learned no new ideas. What is missing, which must insist, is the political will to get this through. And if we don't, we are finished. And I'm happy DJ Suleiman is here. I knew him through fighting an employer in Kano. He was fighting the union for not prolonging the strike, and I was trying to tell him we have to know where to stop it. Otherwise, we buy more than we can chew. So now you are in the parliament. Me, I have expired as government, but I'm not expired as a president. I think that we need to engage evil as what are we teaching? Masu will tell you that a Nigeria graduate in chemical engineering.
DJM TV. DJM TV.
Fulani people don't say no, they don't like us. Welcome to DJM TV.
DJM TV. DJM TV. DJM TV. DJM TV.
Some of the delegates and ask the question.
DJM TV. DJM TV. DJM TV. DJM